It's called the National Taxpayer Union. My next guest is the Senior Director of Government Affairs. How are you, Tom? Aiello?
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me.
Well, I love having you because you bring back the perspective. Here we are paying for our own destruction. And you know, it's funny. This segment before I had you on, we were arguing about police and what their obligation is and what their job is. Government has but five responsibilities to the honest citizen. Among the main is enforcing law. It's terrible that we, and I don't do this anymore because I moved, but that my fan or the listeners and the people in Chicago, the honest people, they pay for politicians to not do their job. We have police, prosecutors, and judges that protect the criminal and get paid by the honest. That's really aggravating, isn't it?
You know, it really is. And I think when you think of the taxpayer, the people who are footing the bill for everything, and let's be honest, government wouldn't be here if it weren't for the hardworking people that fund the government. And, you know, I think taxpayers are always put to the back of the line and forgotten. And that's sort of the work that NTU and so many of your listeners do. It's to put taxpayers at the front of the line and say, hey, we have a voice here too, and you should listen to us.
Well, what your organization, what you bring to the forefront is something that gets lost in all of the compartmentalized failures and discussions. And what that is that the whole government is supposed to operate in America. It's built on the citizen, not the government. It's built on the rights of the citizen, not the power of the government. And yet we've allowed the government to backdoor nationalize our life. And, you know, it's a bigger argument about debt, but it's one that I think we always have to focus on. The government cannot run on the so-called taxes it receives. So it's created this incredible way to guarantee that the future will be harmless, will be helpless, will be unable to even change things because, after all, we got to pay the debt. And I'm wondering, do you think about that in the grand scheme of things? I mean, here we are operating on what? If you're kind, they say it's $6 trillion that comes in, but the government spends $11 trillion. So every year you're in the whole $5 trillion. The last 15, we added 30 to the debt. And that $6 trillion, by the way, the vast majority of that is government spending. So that pool of people who are actually taxpayers shrinks and shrinks and shrinks, and the spending gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We're really over a barrel here, aren't we?
I mean, we have this radical idea that we should have a smaller government. There should be fewer regulations. And, of course, that means making sure the water is safe, the air is clean, and all the good things that we like. But at the end of the day, so many of those regulations stifle the economy. And the more regulations we have, the more bureaucrats we need to enforce them, the higher taxes we need to pay these salaries. So I think when we think about what should our government look like, it should be, one, a scaled-back version of what we have, allowing more people to keep what they earn. And then, of course, in this whole conversation about credit and credit cards we're going to have, it really comes down to, do we want more government involvement in our life, yes or no? I think if you ask the majority of people, people will say, I want the government off my back and being able to make decisions that I want to make.
Well, it's a funny thing, too, because the problem with Trump, and there are some problems with Trump, but the overarching problem, I don't question the perspective he has or where he wants to fix the problem, is he just wants to fix it. But he has a tendency to overreach with the ways in which to fix it. And one of the most unbelievable ways that I saw was this idea you as a government can limit the profitability of a company that takes risk at the demand, if they're going to be in business, by the government. They have to give everybody a credit card, everybody a mortgage, everybody loans, right? I mean, that's the way it works when you realize the laws in which are enacted for lending and all the nonsense. And yet Trump and his administration said, we're only going to let you make 10% on your money. Well, the argument should be, if you're going to borrow Tom Aiello money, after all, Tom Aiello has never stiffed anybody in his life. He's an incredible businessman. He pays back his loans early. Well, if the credit card company wants to give Tom a loan, I could decide as the credit card company, you know what, Tom, I'm only going to charge you 10. You're going to pay 10. You're not that big of a risk, and I know we're going to get your money back. But that scallywag who has stiffed everybody with 3 bankruptcies, we're going to charge that son of a gun 27%. That's called a free market. But the government says to credit card companies, no. Everybody pays the same. So they created the problem by not allowing independent businesses to make choices of their own, by regulation, by dictate, by mandate. And now they want to limit that profit. Why be in the credit card business anymore?
and that's the exact point that we want to make, right, is every action the federal government takes, there's a reaction to it. So if the federal government were to put a 10% interest rate cap on credit cards, right, there's data that shows that 180 million people are going to be adversely affected. Almost everybody that owns a credit card, except for the super wealthy and the powerful, they're going to see negative drawbacks to this idea. Now, what does that mean? It might mean, one, if you are a lower income person with a, suspect borrowing and repayment history, you might have your credit card cut up for you just by the credit card company.
Sure.
That's not great. You could have higher annual fees if you have one already. If not, you could have one put on your card. You could have the scaled back credit card reward points or miles or cash back that we all have come to like. Or, there could be a cap on how much people are willing to lend to you. So when we take all of these things together, it's really not a good idea to impose these price controls. Price controls, they've never worked no matter what it's been put on. It's not going to work in credit cards either.
Well, the government is in a position that's very advantageous to expand government power, and that is the reality of people who are incapable of understanding what they're doing, demanding that the government save them from themselves, right? So they're in a position where they accumulated a tremendous amount of debt, and now they're paying 24 and 25%. And rather than explore ways to solve that problem, they want the government to save them from the massive payments, not understanding why in the world would a card or any credit company who took a chance on you and they gave you a limit, you pushed it to the limit. They didn't tell you to push it to the limit. Why would they only be allowed to make 10%? What's going to happen is you're going to get guys from my old neighborhood. And they're going to come out because the other thing that nobody talks about, these credit card companies could say, I want 80% of what you owe right now, or we're going to shut off your credit card and we're going to pursue you for damages. So they'll instantly throw a tremendous amount of people in bankruptcy. What are those people to do? They will go to the street for money, and they will pay that 24, 35. They will pay it per week, and you'll bring back juice loans and loan sharks overnight, won't you?
You definitely will, and that's what we're worried about. And I think when we think about this conversation, right, we want to be mindful that people that are struggling, they're working paycheck to paycheck, they might carry a balance every month, and no one wants to pay 30% interest, of course, especially when you don't make that much money. And I think the key here is not to put a price control on. I really think it's about putting more money in people's pockets, and that's what President Trump has wanted to do with the One Big Beautiful Bill, the biggest tax cut in American history. That's putting more money in people's pockets. That means they could pay back their loan that way. But Tom, that's the best way to go about it.
Tom, it has a fatal flaw. All of this capitalism, all of low taxes, it has one tremendous flaw. You have to actually participate to take advantage of it. Right? That's the tremendous flaw. So who cares about keeping your own money except the people that make it? And that's the dirty little secret. I'm curious to know what the percentage is of people that don't. And you know why I say this to you? I was stupefied a year and a half ago. And I kept talking about, back then it was called the American Dark Ages, often referred to as the Biden years. And as I watched that massive percentage of Americans grow that were being subsidized from the government, and at the end of the election, it was 91% of Americans who are subsidized when you include the Obamacare subsidies. So now you're at a system that is a functional operating bankruptcy where 91% of the people are subsidized for their expenses and needs. And in there is the greatest argument against all entitlements in the freest, richest country in the shortest period of time. And what I'm curious to know is, how do you pull it out when more people during the Biden years were recipients of government employment, government grants, government subsidies, government financing, government loans, than at any time in recorded history of mankind? And I don't know if you can.
I have this crazy idea. Maybe we should cap credit card rates, not on people. We should cap the credit card for the federal government, the state governments, and the city of Chicago that continue to spend above their means. I think that's how we can get around this whole problem. That's how we can get our debt in order. Maybe the federal government just needs a price control and would be able to solve the problem.
And then there's the other little side effect. I can't find anywhere, and I've looked everywhere, how much money did the Somalian daycare centers and the Somalian Medicare and senior care and health care that we now know is responsible for $9 billion and counting out of just Minnesota. What did they pay in taxes? Was it more or less than they paid in campaign contributions? And that's the reality we have to focus on. It would appear we only have the guys going to work every day paying taxes. If you get one of these grants, if you've got one of these scams, do you even pay taxes? Do we know what the tax returns are?
Well, I know the House of Representatives is looking into that right now. The Republicans, of course. I don't think the Democrats are coming to the table on it. But I think they're going to look into it, and they're going to uncover a lot. And I think there's more to be uncovered, too. The federal government, I think it's about 10% of the money that they spend is fraud, waste, or abuse. So it's a real big problem. And I think that's how we partly find ourselves in a $38.5 trillion debt and growing every day. We need another Doge. We need to look at where all the money's going, all the contracts, investigate it, and as much as possible, claw back a lot of that money that's been wasted. If not, we're going to continue on this unsustainable fiscal path, and it's the taxpayers that are going to be footing the bill for the whole thing, even more than they already are.
Are you surprised at the inability of the opposition to the government mafia to even argue against why the scheme of backdoor nationalization of our health care called Obamacare, why it should ever exist beyond today? Shouldn't it just be ripped out? I am amazed at the inability of the so-called elected representatives that are not Democrats to make the argument. No one is making the argument. No one is showing the facts, the destruction. Singly, the largest failure this country has ever seen in any bill is Obamacare, which still prefers Affordable Care Act. It's beyond funny. It should be on Saturday Night Live, shouldn't it?
I mean, it's the Unaffordable Care Act. Healthcare costs have, I think, doubled or tripled just since it was created. It wasn't intended to do that. They said healthcare costs would get under control if they passed it. It's not the case. Now, here's the thing. Republicans, they actually held the line this past year with these enhanced Obamacare credits, right? We've probably heard a lot about them. They cost $40 billion a year. To be honest, I thought Republicans were going to fold, and they were going to extend them and give the Democrats a big win and, continue to subsidize Obamacare. Speaker Johnson and Senate Republicans, they held the line. And I think we should give them as much credit as possible for not giving in and actually protecting the interests of taxpayers and people that believe that Obamacare was a big mess and continues to need subsidies to remain possible.
Now that the ER nurse has been killed for fighting the police officers, now the Senate says they won't approve it. And you know what's funny, too? I remember Jonathan Gruber, who was one of the MIT scumbag Marxists that wrote Obamacare and hid and lied about what Obamacare was. But one of the things that gets lost in the argument, what Obamacare really was a massive expansion of Medicare and Medicaid and entitlements. So I can't help but notice the link. This whole thievery process of Medicare and Medicaid, of elder care, of transportation, of even kids, is all part of that bill. So I'd like to know how much of what we're witnessing in little Somalia, known as Minnesota, being stolen, could not have happened prior to Obamacare. And what you really have here is the intention of Obamacare. You opened up the floodgates for the American taxpayer to be robbed in every Democrat area. And that's the beauty of it. It's perfectly compartmentalized. And as long as Minnesota doesn't be equated to Maine, California, or Illinois, or New York, or Philadelphia, or Boston, whatever, they'll never figure out. That's what Obamacare achieved. It opened up the floodgates for hundreds of billions, if not trillions, to be stolen in the name of health care.
I mean, I think you just said it perfectly. Look, Medicaid, the subsidized health care for the low-income people, it's approaching $1 trillion every single year. Republicans, in their one big beautiful bill, they put some guardrails on it. That's a good first step. It didn't go far enough. I think Republicans have another bite at the apple to really clamp down to make sure that people that are getting Medicaid dollars genuinely need it and it's not going for nefarious purposes. I think that's some basic things that should happen and probably will happen, honestly. Now, I think when we talk about Obamacare generally and the size of the federal government, when you have a federal government spending $6 trillion every single year, it's very easy for a few billion here or there to go unnoticed. That's because the size of the federal government is so big. If we were to cut the size of the federal government in half and keep these safety social net programs for people that genuinely need it, one, I think things would improve. Two, we could probably lower taxes or pay down our debt. And three, we'd have more accountability on all the dollars that are spent. So when you take all of those things together, I think that's what Republicans should be fighting for. Not saying we should, kick grandma out of the nursing home or making sure poor people don't have health care. That's not what we're saying. We want compassionate care, but we want to make sure the people that are actually getting these programs, one, are actually genuinely in need of it, and two, we're not wasting these on things that are possibly going to foreign countries.
Tom, you know what else is amazing to realize? Never in the solutions that are put forward are provider supplied. The answer to all of this is provider supplied charity. I mean, I'll never forget, it was in the 60s and the 50s. Doctors were giving their services away in third world countries because they were able to take a deduction. All of this, from the food to the rent to the health care, if it was provider supplied and offset the taxes they paid, the government doesn't have to write a check for anything. But that takes away the power of corruption, and that's why it's never suggested. And look at the quality of health care. When you lose 50% of doctors and 50% of hospitals and the costs go up 400%, it's a scam. You don't have to go any further than that. It's an absolute scam. When you look at the way in which all of these insurance companies now own the drug distribution companies, now own the doctor offices, now own the dentist officers, they could not have done that before Obamacare. And it's the vehicle of not just failure, but of the corruption that we're being robbed of. And I believe it is a very large part of the $30 trillion that has been added since Barack Obama was late on his car payment at the west side of Chicago. What do you think?
I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and I think it just underscores the need to try and repeal and replace Obamacare with a system that actually works. And I think Republicans in this whole conversation, they have a bit of a messaging problem, right? Healthcare is owned by the Democrats. They use it not only in campaign commercials, but they use it against Republicans as much as possible, that we're taking away healthcare, we're going to kill people. None of that is true. Republicans need to be for something, and I don't think until we actually have that messaging right, we're going to be winning on this issue, even when the American people know healthcare is unaffordable and they know that Democrats are probably the ones that have broken it. So I do think Republicans need to go to the drawing table, figure out a plan, and sell it. That way we can not only win elections, but also, more importantly, fix the system that works better for taxpayers and patients alike.
Now, Tom Aiello, when you talk to these Washington nerds, and I know you do, I want you to tell him I talked to this crackpot the other day, and he's got another brilliant idea, and he'll do it himself. I want you to talk about the right to refuse. I don't want Social Security. Give me my money back. I don't want Medicare. Give me my money back. I don't want any of the programs. Just give me my money back. You don't owe me anything as I get older. Nothing. Don't you think that would be a great way to break it, the way it was put in as well? When people look at their W-2 and they see the way they pay taxes for Social Security, taxes for Medicare, taxes for Medicaid, I don't want any of it. Give me my money. Let's go our own ways. Don't you think we could break it that way?
I mean, I like what you're saying here. I think it just comes back to the smaller federal government means more money in people's pockets, whether it's price controls on credit cards or intrusion into healthcare markets. When government gets involved, it's bad news for everybody involved.
Yeah.
Get off my back. Let me keep more of what I earn. It's not that difficult, unfortunately.
The idea they call it healthcare, and I have a chance of going to a Democrat doctor, nurse, or senior center. I don't want any Democrat coming near my body. I work very hard on it. Tom Aiello, thanks for making time. Will you do me a favor and say how much? Tell everybody you work with how proud I am of the National Taxpayer Union. And you could find it at NTU. Is it .org or .com?
It's .org. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Tom. Take care of yourself.